Now, there's new technology being developed every day to track the movements of people. And some say it can be used to fight epidemics like the recent Ebola scare, and that it can also be used to track illegal immigrants. But some say, wait just a minute, could it be used to track law-abiding American citizens? Here to discuss this is technology pioneer Neville Pattinson from the Secure ID Coalition and our own John Ransom, Townhall finance editor and host of Ransom Notes Radio. Welcome, both of you. Good to have you.
Thank you, Gina.
Neville, I want to start with you, and I want you to just go ahead and tell us about this new technology and what's good about it.
Well, there's a number of different technologies that are helping border control. The current U.S. passport, for example, now has a chip in the back cover, which allows the border officer to verify that this is indeed the correct passport issued by whatever country it's issued by, and the information printed on the page in the passport is also the same that's in the chip. And they can therefore triangulate that with a person standing there to prove this is indeed a valid passport with the true card holder present.
I mean, I hate to be snarky about this because none of this is funny, but people are coming right across our border not using passports at all. So I almost wonder, is this just a further encouragement for more people to come illegally rather than to fly in on a plane and use their passport?
I would hope not. That would be clearly a problem of immigration. Once you've apprehended these individuals, the key point here is to now obtain their biometrics, get their face, their fingers, etc., associate that with a name so they're in a system, and then if you ever encounter them again, you know that they've been apprehended once before, and you can now bring them to task. So we can't necessarily stop people coming through the border unless we put more energy into that border protection. But once you get hold of the people, the thing now is to identify them.
John Ransom, do you have any concerns about this technology possibly being used on American citizens? Let's say there's another crisis and another Patriot Act, and could this not be included?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the problem isn't that we don't have technology to track these people. The problem is we don't enforce the laws to begin with. You know, within 24 hours of the 9/11 attack, we knew who the terrorists were. We knew exactly. We knew they were here illegally. We knew even before then that they were here illegally. The problem isn't that we lack devices to know these things. The problem is we lack the will to actually enforce the laws that we already have on the books. And so if we would just go ahead and do the same thing with the Boston bombers, if we would just go ahead and enforce the laws to begin with, then we wouldn't have these problems. And one of my problems with this type of technology is it's invented to address a problem of the federal government not enforcing the law to begin with. And the solution, unfortunately, falls heavily on you and I, who are private individuals who follow the law, presumably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense to me. But I do want to ask you, Neville, because I can see where this technology can definitely be used for some things, certainly being very leery of any further government intrusion, to be sure. But for example, when the doctor came over with Ebola, would he have been one of those people, to be treated in America, would he have been one of those people subject to being implanted with this technology, a bona fide American citizen who happened to be sick? And if so, then what about other Americans who get sick with whatever diseases? Could it not be used as a proverbial mark of the beast, so to speak?
Absolutely not. The technology in the U.S. passport is the most privacy-enhancing technology ever produced in any national document. It cannot be read, it cannot be tracked unless you're at a border station with the paper document. It has to be opened and read optically, and then it can be read electronically all over a very short distance. So this is not a tracking technology. This is a document authentication and person authentication technology.
But what do you say to John Ransom's assertion that, if the federal government would just enforce the laws that are already on the books, need for this technology, it certainly wouldn't be as pronounced as it is. What do you say to that?
Well, I'd say that we need to have an efficient way of the regular people traveling and providing commerce and movement around the globe. All the countries in the world are organizing a common set of standards around these travel documents to facilitate the good travelers to move and to impair the people who shouldn't be traveling because they're under false documents or they don't have the right document. So this is about enabling commerce and travel, not about tracking.
So, John Ransom, if this is just to move things along quickly, you fly all the time,
Mm-hmm.
I fly all the time, that sure sounds good. Do you think that the way he describes it, that there's a specific problem with it?
Well, I don't think there's a problem with embedding it in a passport. I mean, there's certainly legitimate ways of doing it. My concern is that every single thing that comes out of the government today, whether it's Dodd-Frank, whether it's Obamacare, whether it's Common Core standards, has some sort of a tracking mechanism in it where the federal government tracks personally identifiable information. It's not a very small step to be able to translate that into facial recognition software, for example,
Right.
where they can track you wherever you are, or they can read the chip from a station that you pass through. You know, even today, the federal government has admitted that in Houston, they tested a program where they could personally identify cars as they came through from the PSI, from the tire pressure monitors inside the car. And so now it's not legal for them to do that, but it's the federal government, so who's going to really stop them?
Yeah, and they aren't exactly in the business of legal these
Right.
days, considering the IRS.
You know,
and
any
NSA.
power that we give the government, we ought to expect them to use at some point, whether for good or for ill. That's just kind of the American experience. And while other countries may do some of these things, other countries aren't the model for the United States of America.
So what is your advice, John Ransom? Because you're a business guy, you understand this. To somebody who has an amazing technology with some good potential to keep America safer, as Neville's talking about, what's your advice to those kinds of companies? Because they're not just going to tuck the technology in their belt and forget about it, right?
Well, my advice is to be a citizen first and to be a technologist second, as we all should be. I mean, there are plenty of ways to make money with legitimate technologies. As I said, I don't have a problem with tracking passports. I absolutely think that it's a good technology for the passport business. But when we're talking about making it personally identifiable, something that we have to carry with us, which, by the way, has been proposed with this very same technology, where they've proposed a national ID card that we all carry, you know, having papers with us. That's where I draw the line. And so I don't blame technologists for coming up with solutions any more than I blame the people who invented the nuclear bomb for that. But having said that, we have to be cautious as citizens on how we implement these kinds of things.
How does that work out for you, Neville? When you start to see some sort of moral dilemma with this technology, what is your obligation as a citizen in that scenario?
I think I can fully endorse what is being said. I spend my time evangelizing the privacy protections that should be in any of these documents to ensure that they're not able to be tracked, to ensure that we are preserving the right of the citizen to be, you know, aware of their surroundings and not being tracked without their knowledge. So all about privacy protections in any implementation of any system. And from that perspective, you know, national ID, whatever, let's make sure it's not used for tracking. Let's make sure if there's any document that's needed for national needs, such as the Social Security card, that we put the best technology in it to provide those services that the government's going to provide, not to create a tracking technology.
And what phase is all of this in right now? Where are we with this technology? Is it already being used? And if so, where?
Electronic passports have been issued by dozens of countries for the last decade. U.S. since about 2004, so about 10 years. So any U.S. passport today, you'll get the very, very strong privacy controlling passport. So that is the best document in the world. Other countries have failed to do the same good privacy protections that the U.S. has done. There are other countries that issue IDs for various purposes, but what we need to be aware of in our society is, you know, there are other things that can track you, like a cell phone. You know, these are on all the time. They're tracking you. We've got to make people aware that they have this great technology, but it can be used to track. We've got to get the right policy and privacy protections in place to make sure citizens can opt in rather than find themselves already being tracked without their knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. You had one more comment?
Yeah, Neville brings up an interesting point. Some old technology that we use, Social Security number, that's a very old technology.
Right, right.
It's already being abused in order to track citizens, right? It was supposed to just be for Social Security, but we use it for a variety of purposes, as does the government, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the attention to this matter. Neville Pattinson and John Ransom, we appreciate it so much. You can find Neville at Neville_Gamalto on Twitter, gamalto.com, as well as his website. John Ransom, Ransom Notes Radio, and at Bam Ransom on Twitter.